Hello everybody, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology, and I'm bringing you another reading. Today I'm going to be doing the chart of the summer solstice, which occurs on June 21st, 2018, exactly at 4:07 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And before I get into the chart of the solstice, I want to thank everybody for subscribing to my channel. A little bit of astrology in action. I had the new moon in Gemini, around 22 degrees, exactly conjunct my Saturn in Gemini in my 9th house. And within the last 10 to 12 days, I've probably had about 80 people become followers of my channel. So when you think about Saturn, that has to do with our work. It also has to do with our authority or being an authority. In Gemini, of course, it's through communication and sharing of information. And then in the 9th house, it has to do with Sagittarian energy of expanding not only my own perspective, but the perspective of other people as well. It can be the energy of the teacher. So I've just seen a lot of growth in the last 10 to 12 days on my channel, and I wanted to just send out a heartfelt thank you to everybody who's subscribed, because it encourages me and it makes me recognize that I also have a responsibility, Saturn in the 9th, to continue to share information with people who have said, hey, we want to hear from you. All right, so thanks again, and now getting into the chart of the summer solstice. Let me tell you a little bit about what the solstice is if you're not aware. The solstice is when the sun reaches its highest latitude as it appears to be circling the earth. So this really is speaking to people in the northern hemisphere when we talk about the summer solstice, because it's when the day is at its longest. And then after that day, the days begin to get shorter and shorter and shorter as the sun moves further south in its latitude as it circles the earth from our perspective. But in the southern hemisphere, they're experiencing the winter solstice, which means their day is the shortest on the same day, June 21st, 2018. But and then they're celebrating the return of the sun. So their days will get increasingly longer from that point on. So even though it's a different event that's occurring, both energies or both moments are celebrating the light. And that's the common theme. In the northern hemisphere, we are celebrating the most increase of light that we will experience in the year. And symbolically, the sun represents all of our own internal light, our solar energy, how we shine out into the world. You could call it our will, or our conscious awareness, our creative spirit. All of these interpretations relate to the solar energy. So symbolically at this time, we're also celebrating our own light. And one of the wonderful things that you can do to acknowledge this and honor this on solstice times is to do a small ritual where you light a candle, or maybe you have a little electric light that you can turn on, and take a moment. And if you can, of course, it's early in the morning where I live, 4:07 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, but take a moment to meditate, or say some sort of prayer of thankfulness and of acknowledgement of the expansive light within yourself and within everyone else. It's important to recognize these times, because this is what connects us to the universe. And the more we can become conscious and aware of these shift points, the more we will feel our connection and be able to be guided by these universal energies that are flowing through us and within us. The solstices in the summertime in the Northern Hemisphere always occurs when the sun is moving into the sign of Cancer. So this is another symbolism. What it's suggesting is that as the sun is radiating and shining its brightest, it's also connected to expressing through the sign of Cancer what it feels deeply. Cancer's ruled by the moon, and it is symbolic of our feelings, our emotions, our intuitive senses, how we respond instinctively to the world. So really what this is suggesting is that we shine our brightest when we are connected to how we feel deeply and when we are expressing how we feel deeply out into the world. When we look at the chart of the solstice, there's a few things going on. First of all, there's a beautiful grand trine that's been happening in water signs between Mercury, Jupiter, and Neptune. Mercury's at 16 degrees of Cancer, Jupiter is at 13 degrees of Scorpio, and Neptune's at 16 degrees of Pisces. A grand trine in water brings ease into what we're able to feel, because water is about our emotions and sensing and intuition and feelings and emoting. So we've got the energy of communication, the energy of philosophical expansion, growth, optimism, and the energy of compassion and transcendence. And on a larger scale, I see this working in certain issues that are coming up, especially in the United States right now, around issues of immigration and the way that it's being handled by our current administration, and the collective outcry, not even from people just in the United States, but in other countries like the Pope, that are coming in, saying we need to find a more humane way of accomplishing some sort of immigration reform. But I also see it happening potentially for everybody at this time, when we can tap into those feelings within ourselves and those perspectives within ourselves that give us a bigger perspective and a more compassionate and transcendent perspective that we're able to communicate in our relationships with others out in the world, and as well as our close personal relationships. Another interesting thing that's happening at this solstice time is that we are now entering the Mars retrograde station phase. So what's happening is that Mars in Aquarius is slowing down at about 9 degrees, which is the same degree that it's going to begin its retrograde motion on the 26th of June. And with Mars retrograde times, at the station times is when we can feel kind of the intensity of the energy gearing up. Even though this Mars retrograde time is going to happen for the next several months, we can feel what the energy is all about when these station points happen. And Mars is our action energy, it's our willpower, it's how we assert ourselves. And when Mars goes retrograde, similar to a Mercury retrograde, we don't function in the same way with that quality of energy. It's a time where maybe the way we assert ourselves, how we assert ourselves, is being reevaluated, simply because it's not working the way that it has been before. And we may get stopped or delayed as we try and assert. I want to read something from Cafe Astrology that speaks to this. They write, when Mars is in its retrograde cycle, we are forced to reassess our current projects, our approach to getting what we want, and our desire nature. Rather than directly asserting our desires, we tend towards introspection. While Mars in direct motion is direct, straightforward, assertive, and aggressive, with Mars in retrograde motion, Mars energy is essentially turned inward. It's internalized, intensified, personified, and perhaps pressurized. We can be hesitant about taking action, second-guessing our instincts or our natural impulses rather than acting upon them. The way we react to situations under normal conditions just doesn't necessarily work for us now, or we don't exactly trust our instincts. When anger is internalized, there can be some rather negative byproducts, such as tension, resentments, depression, apathy, and even some paranoia. On the other hand, it can also be personalized and made more intimate. Our goal during a Mars retrograde period should not be, however, to simply sit on our impulses or to squelch our enthusiasm. Rather, it should be to better understand our impulses, our survival instincts, our anger, our sexuality, and our inner courage, the ways that we go about getting what we want from life. The cosmos is asking us to look before we leap, rather than throw ourselves into action just for the time being. Now, the Mars retrograde is going to happen in the sign of Aquarius. And I've been seeing this as I've been pondering what Mars retrograde in Aquarius means. And what's been coming up for me is, if Mars is about reassessing how we assert ourselves, and Aquarius is about the energy of asserting through our humanitarian energy, through our thinking of the group, thinking of the whole, even though it is about having, asserting ourselves with individuality, it's not an individuality that steps all over everybody and is like a me first kind of individuality. It's recognizing that everybody is an individual, and through that recognition and understanding, we can accept that they too are an individual, even if we don't agree on the same things. Now, Aquarius also rules technology. And one of the things that I've been thinking about as this Mars retrograde in Aquarius cycle has been coming up is that we are really quick on, let's say, social media, for example, to say something critical. We impulsively want to respond. And because that person's not in front of us, we don't have the same kind of filters happening. And I feel oftentimes people say things that they would never even say if they were literally in front of that person. I feel this Mars retrograde in Aquarius time can be a time where collectively we can all have a look at how we're operating, how we're asserting ourselves through our social media platforms, and possibly reevaluate how it is we choose to communicate so that we're doing it in ways that actually take into consideration the whole or the group or just somebody else's individuality. So that's one aspect of this Mars in retrograde Aquarius that I've been thinking about. The other thing too is what's happening, again, going back to the immigration issue in the United States. It seems like right now it's a really critical time where the public is putting a lot of pressure on the political people in control to say, hey, we don't accept this. This is inhumane, this separation of children from their families. And, it's gone too far. We won't stand for this. And I feel that that's another expression of the energy, basically wanting to assert, again, in a way that thinks of the group, thinks of the whole, and that is humanitarianly minded. Another thing that's happening on the solstice, too, is that Venus in the sign of Leo is opposing Mars in the sign of Aquarius. It's going to be exact the same day of the solstice, a little bit later in the day at 10:54 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So let's think about what Venus opposite Mars means. Venus is our loving energy. It's our creative energy. And in Leo, the fire energy, the fixed fire energy, we really want to express our creative energy out in the world where it can be seen and recognized and noticed. And also, though, it's a very dignified energy where we're expressing our loving energy in a very dignified way. You know, it's Lion, the king of the jungle. You know, he's majestic with his mane. So there's something here that's saying we need to bring more dignity into our creative expression, into our loving nature expression, because sometimes with the opposition, we can polarize the energy. So with the opposition to Mars in Aquarius, again, it's bringing in this possibility of being too, in some ways, extreme, or too like, I don't care about anybody else. I'm free to do whatever I want. You know, that's Aquarian, you know, it's no boundaries, no rules. It wants freedom. And sometimes even though the air energy of Aquarius is an intellectual energy that has a lot of insight to bring into how Mars asserts itself. But the shadow side of Aquarian can just be sort of wanting to assert oneself, just, you know, to be rebellious, basically. So with this opposition between Mars and Venus, which are both, you know, connected with our loving natures, our desire natures, our sexual natures, it's suggesting that we need to find a balance between expressing ourselves, you know, through that creative and loving nature in a way that isn't too demanding, that is more dignified, but also asserting ourselves in ways that think of the group and think of the whole, and attempting not to live in either one of those states in a polarized, you know, position. In a polarized state, you get the more negative expressions of each energy. You know, the Venus in Leo could be a little bit self-centered. The Mars in Aquarius could be asserting oneself in such a freedom-oriented way that you can't even relate to what that is, or others can't relate to what that is. And again, you could apply it. Let's go back to the immigration issue. You know, it's like, where do we find the balance between being loving and being caring, and being noble and being dignified in our loving expression, at the same time asserting ourselves in a way that takes into consideration the whole and the group in an intelligent way, really. Aquarius is a very intelligent energy, and it wants to bring intelligent solutions to the situation. And the last thing that I want to talk about that's occurring on the solstice is the fact that the moon that day is going to be in the sign of Libra, and it's going to be squaring Mercury in the sign of Cancer. So Moon in Libra wants to find harmony and balance through its emotional expression. Mercury in Cancer is sensitive, and it feels very deeply through the way that it wants to communicate that. So the cardinal square here between the two can suggest that the energies are just finding, you know, a challenge in trying to get both of them expressed. You know, the Mercury in Cancer might really feel something, but the moon in Libra kind of wants to make sure that everybody's okay and everybody's feeling all right, and we've got harmony here, right? We've got balance here. We don't want to upset the apple cart. Where Mercury in Cancer is sort of feeling like, but wait a minute, you know, this is how I really feel, you know, and I need to communicate how I really feel. So that's another energy that's going to be happening. Now, the opposite of that is Mercury in Cancer might be feeling so attached to the way it feels that it has a difficult time, finding the harmony and balance in the emotional expression because it's just overwhelmed by feeling so much sensitivity. So I mention all of these different aspects that are going on the solstice because this is the energy that we're going to be moving into the next phase of the year with, and these are dynamics to ponder, these are dynamics to consider as we experience the energy of the day, as we perhaps do a ritual. We could speak to some of these energies and how we would like to be able to express them with more clarity or more truth or more connection within ourselves and out into the world. So thank you so much for watching. This has been my Summer Solstice 2018 video. And if you like my channel, please subscribe. You can also find me at my website, highaltitudeastrology.com. I write a daily blog that you can sign up to receive an email about every day. And I write about the current trends and the planetary movements and what's going on for the day and what you can expect to feel. Thanks so much. Catch you later. Adios.